There are many things in Halo that push the boundaries of what is possible in real life, but that's just science fiction for you. In my previous videos I talked about things that don't make sense in Halo, such as Miranda's to war line. Well, I have returned with a collection of things in Halo that don't make sense. However, in this episode, most of the things come from the comments left on my previous videos. Now we can collectively ruin Halo for everybody.
I fucking hate it!
In all fairness, I should make the disclaimer that Halo is a video game, so something might not make sense, but it's done to try and make the game fun or interesting most of the time. And I'm not talking about things like how a Spartan can flip a tank. Instead, I'm talking about things like how Forerunner weapons are reloaded like an 18th century firearm.
Huh?
If you end up enjoying the video, make sure you leave a like and a comment, and subscribe for more content like this. Also, consider joining my Discord if you want to play some old school Halo custom games and get updates on my future videos. With all that said, let's begin the community edition of things that don't make sense in Halo. The first one comes from Friendly Reaper 9012, who says, during the Halo freeze, the Covenant level is a huge window right behind Truth, Johnson and the Brutes. Where are the rest of the Hornets, the Pelicans, and humans in general? Why did Chief and the Arbiter take the lift when they could have flown through the window? In my previous video, I talked about how it doesn't make sense that Miranda went to rescue Johnson on her own, given that there is a sizable UNSC presence in the area. Much of the same could be said here, as Miranda has already broken a huge hole in the window, big enough for a Pelican, and the Flood would soon begin their assault, distracting what little remained of the Covenant. There were plenty of aircraft available for Chief and the Arbiter to use to hot drop into the Citadel's control center. In fact, during the time it takes for Chief and the Arbiter to ride the elevator, Miranda crashes into the Citadel and she is killed attempting to save Johnson.
Johnson!
Killjoy.
Gotcha, bitch!
So why not have Miranda pick up Chief and the Arbiter from the light bridge and confront Truth together? Seeing as Chief and RB are two of the best warriors in the galaxy, surely they would have enough time to eliminate Truth, deactivate Halo, and even keep Miranda alive. Whilst we could consider that a more logical option, and while I still think Miranda's death is dumb, the story here is at a pivotal moment for the franchise in general. This is the end of the Covenant, and even with so few members left, they are very close to completing their goal and activating Halo. The situation here is critical. That usually brings risk, and these two elements combined does make the story more interesting. I'd say Miranda was killed because the plot demanded something dramatic happen to one of our heroes, but you could easily say that if every major character has plot armor and is invincible, that could make Halo's story very stale. The logical choice in Halo is rarely the one taken. For example, where are some of the weapons in Halo that have proved largely effective in the real world, such as artillery and drones? A theme of Halo is humanity being on the back foot, and Miranda's dramatic death is a perfect example of this. It's trying to convey how time is of the essence, and to not make things look easy for the humans. For our next mystery, we have to tear apart my favourite Halo game, that being Halo 2. This one comes from Nil05686, who has a big question about the continuity of Halo 2 between the missions Delta Halo and Quarantine Zone. It's quite a big comment, so summarising what Nil0 has said there. Something never discussed is the timeline in Halo 2 from Delta Halo to Quarantine Zone. In Amberclad and Regret's carrier arrive at the same time. Regret heads to the temple at the Crater Lake for his sermon, calling in the Covenant fleet. Meanwhile, Miranda takes the ship to the library, which is visible from the lake, to get the index. By the time Chief reaches the temple, the Covenant fleet arrives, but Miranda should have already reached the library, either in the ship or by Pelican. We know she eventually flies the Amberclad there, as it's parked outside the quarantine zone. She even mentions a barrier around the library, suggesting it delayed her. Since she can't get the index before the Arbiter, the shield at the start of the sacred icon must have been holding the humans back.
How's it going, you two? So far, so good. We're approaching the main temple now. Roger that. I'm as close to the library as I can get. There's some sort of barrier. We're trying to find a way around it. I'll keep you posted.
But by then, the Covenant had to process Regret's death, shift leadership to the Brutes, assign the Arbiter, and send him out. However, Sacred Icon implies the shield wasn't fully blocking access. Tartarus calls it one of the shield generators, suggesting others existed. The timeline scenes off. Play through those levels, consider the dialogue, the objects, and the battle states and try to piece it together, it doesn't quite add up. So from this we essentially have 4 questions. If multiple shields exist, why did Tartarus bother bringing one down instead of flying over the inactive ones? Why did it take Miranda so long to get the index when she had a ship? Who were the Covenant troops already inside the quarantine zone? Were they Regrets forces? And how much time has passed between Delta Halo and quarantine zone? I'd say most of these points are all valid, in particular the time between Delta Halo and quarantine zone, as we heard in the clip there Miranda was being held up by a barrier, and that would suggest that she is already at the barrier we disabled while playing as the Arbiter. This would also suggest High Charity has already arrived, and the changing of the guard, swapping the elites and the brutes has already happened. But when we hear that dialogue in Halo 2,
There's some sort of barrier. We're trying to find a way around it.
we are yet to see the cutscene of High Charity and its fleet arriving at Delta Halo. This one is a lot harder to explain. Usually things like this are padded out or slightly retconned in the wider lore, but for the context of the game this could be a slight MacGuffin in terms of the narrative. It's almost as if Miranda is talking to us from the future during the mission Regret. Part of the reason I never noticed this is because Halo 2 has such strong writing and world building whilst showing rather than telling, and because of that I don't see this slight inconsistency in the writing as a major boon to the overall story. However, if you can line up the timeline of events between Delta Halo and Quarantine Zone, do say so in the comments below. Our next one concerns 343 Guilty Spark, and this one comes from Mario the Leo Pleodron? Leo the Pleodron. This is another big comment, so to summarise, he is asking, why didn't 343 Guilty Spark use his laser weapon before Halo 3? He casually wields it there, using it in Floodgate and again in the final mission, yet in Combat Evolved, he never uses it to stop the Chief, Cortana or the Flood outbreak, despite later using it on a single combat form. If he can attack Johnson, Chief and the Arbiter, why not Truth to prevent the ring's activation, or Chief in CE when he is actively opposing him? He also neglects his Sentinels. In CE and Halo 3, he commands them against Chief and the Arbiter, yet in Halo 2, he doesn't use the gas mine Sentinels to prevent his capture. He could control the Arc Sentinels, despite not knowing about the Arc, so taking control of the gas mine Sentinels right next to his installation should have been easier. He could have used them to stop Truth, sending them crashing into the control room like Miranda's Pelican.
Absolutely unacceptable!
Between his laser and Sentinels, Spark had many chances to change events. His failure to use these tools led to defeats, mishaps and captures. Strange considering his vast experience and purpose containing the Flood. It is another good question and one that raises a good point, especially when you consider the hardship for Chief that was the library. That's confirmed to us, the player, but also in the CE novelization titled The Flood, where the book describes Chief being pushed to his absolute limit when fighting through the library on Alpha Halo. You also don't encounter any Sentinels on the gas mine when we confront Seisa Rafumi, despite seeing many of them elsewhere on the station. The combined firepower of Spark and his Sentinels could have been enough to push back both Tartarus and the Arbiter, giving Spark enough time to escape. Even whilst captured by Tartarus at Delta Halo's control room, Spark could have easily lasered the brutes and rescued Miranda, and much could be said for the same for Halo 3, where we stop Halo's activation at the control room there. I also don't believe it was past Bungie to consider giving Spark a laser weapon during the original game's development, as they had already armed all the other Sentinels in the game, so why not Spark? Well, I will attempt to answer this one, and I'll start by suggesting that while Bungie might have considered giving Spark a weapon, they might not have been sure how to implement a combat section with Guilty Spark, rather leaving the Sentinels to be the robotic threats of the game. In addition, a combat section fighting Spark would suggest he can be damaged and destroyed, which may lead the player on to thinking we will kill the Monitor before wrapping up the game. Bungie likely wanted to keep him around for any future Halo games, and they did, with Spark being one of the most essential characters in the original Halo trilogy. For Halo 2, this meant Spark could bridge the gap between the first and second game, being one of the few survivors of Alpha Halo's destruction, and because of this, he would begin to plant a seed of doubt in various members of the Covenant, our beloved Arbiter included.
The Oracle.
Hello, I am 343 Guilty Spark. I am the monitor of Installation 04.
Ask the Oracle about Halo. How they would sacrifice us all for nothing.
More questions? Splendid. I would be happy to assist.
To allow Spark to use a weapon to get out of every situation once again harkens to fun over logic. The story wouldn't have the twists and turns it does have if Spark just vaporized every obstacle in its path. If we had killed him in Halo CE, we wouldn't have such an iconic character with such an iconic voice and dialogue. I think part of the reason we even have to ask these questions in the first place is because we try to imagine what we would do in these situations, as being killed or captured is less than ideal. We'd all much prefer to survive and escape as we see fit, and logically, if we knew we had the power of a Forerunner laser at our disposal, we would use it to protect ourselves in every life-threatening situation we could find ourselves in. Some people left comments suggesting that Spark did not actually have control of the Sentinels on the gas mine or the yard, but once we are on the replacement for Alpha Halo, Spark says,
But this ring is mine.
which logically would make sense if the ring in Halo 3 is a replacement for Installation 04, the ring assigned to 343 Guilty Spark. If you have any more suggestions for why Spark didn't defend himself earlier, do say so in the comments below. The next one has a lot to do with the gameplay side of Halo, and this one comes from Nate205, who says, here are some things that make no sense. A Warthog offers less protection than a present day Humvee. The Wraith, being a tank from the most powerful and advanced empire in the galaxy, can be destroyed with a single frag grenade. How about large scarabs of huge weight and size, having such sharp and pointy legs? That's the equivalent of wearing high heels into battle. It would sink on many soft surfaces due to the ground putting it up with all the pressure. The Scorpion, being a futuristic tank, is slow, has a lower caliber main armament and shell velocity, and even less protection than even some World War II tanks. He also mentions that as super soldiers in the first few games, we couldn't sprint or do much more than a jog and a jump, as well as mentioning how using a sniper rifle unsuppressed while attempting to be covert is unrealistic, as is using a torch to illuminate your surroundings when Chief's armor would have night vision, which would aid with concealment much more than a flashlight. There is a few things to unpack here. A lot of this has to do with a seemingly lack of technological advancements for vehicles 500 years in the future, and a little bit on basic stealth tactics. I would have to agree with his take on the Warthog, as in terms of real world practicality, it doesn't offer much protection to troops riding in it at all. While it might make for a good light armored reconnaissance vehicle, I mean that is literally what it is, in Halo the Warthog has always been used as a frontline vehicle, being deployed in some intense battles. You might think some doors might be a good addition, even if they were top opening. It would make the Warthog look a bit more futuristic. Although we should also consider that changing the design of the Warthog too much might constitute as heresy to some. The Warthog has largely maintained a similar appearance throughout all of the Halo games. It is also so synonymous with the franchise that fans have even built their own functioning Warthogs. The Warthog's appearance and design can also be seen in the Razorback in Halo Infinite, a vehicle that is meant to be an up-armoured Warthog. Still no doors on that car either. However, the Warthog lacking sufficient protection can be chalked up to the rule of cool. It was introduced in CE, where the UNSC and its aesthetic largely mimics the Colonial Marines from Aliens, and while the ground vehicle in that film is fully armoured, the used rough and rugged aesthetic of the Colonial Marines also translates to the Warthog. We also have to remember we play as a Spartan with their own energy shield to protect them, so even if you get shot while operating the Hog, you're not going to die straight away most of the time. With regards to the Wraith, this one can be explained easily. Admittedly, in ODST, it really doesn't make sense how a regular human can board a Wraith and punch a hole through what should be the toughest part of the tank. But in all the other Halos, we play as a Spartan who has sufficient strength to punch through the Wraith's driver's hatch and plant a grenade in the cockpit. Latching onto the back of the Wraith also isn't too far-fetched for a Spartan. However, the Scorpion, generally speaking, doesn't make much sense when its main armament is only a 90mm cannon. For reference, modern tanks like the Abrams, the Challenger, and the Leopard fire a 120mm shell. World War II tanks like the Sherman M4 even had a 105mm cannon, and the M26 Pershing tank fires a 90mm shell, the same as the Scorpion. In the modern day, while small caliber guns have their place on the battlefield, they are usually seen on vehicles like the Bradley or the BTR. Much more nimble and mobile vehicles, whereas main battle tanks pack considerably more firepower per shot. Funnily enough, in Halo 5, the Scorpion there is armed with a 150mm cannon, and is somehow 31 tons lighter than the Scorpion seen in other Halo games. Not really sure how that works, but then again, neither does most of Halo 5.
It's the biggest piece of dog shit.
I'm not knowledgeable on the ballistics of firearms and artillery. Perhaps one of you could explain to us all how a 90mm shell can be more destructive than a 120mm shell used in modern time. Perhaps it is because it travels at a greater velocity, I don't really know. In regards to the lack of sprint in every Halo prior to Reach, that can be explained away as game and level design decisions. If you have sprint in the game, the maps have to be bigger, and everything has to be made to accommodate sprint as a feature. However, he does have a good point about the stealth tactics in Halo CE. It simply doesn't make sense to use an unsuppressed sniper while trying to be covert.
Move in to support us, Sergeant. The Master Chief is going to covertly take out as many of the Covenant as he can. Don't open fire until you hear the enemy return fire on us. That should let us keep the element of surprise.
I touched on this during my previous video. I explained how you can fire as many shots as you want, but unless you are actually seen by the Covenant, you won't be detected. But the range between our firing position and the Covenant is quite comical. I mean, all the Covenant are close enough that they are in range of an airsoft gun, and we have to pretend they can't hear a 50 caliber sniper going off 20 meters away. The lack of night vision for Chief's helmet is also quite questionable. Night vision wasn't a new thing in 2001 when CE came out, and it isn't a new thing in 2552 either. It's featured on the sniper rifle scope, but that's it. Instead, we rely on a bright flashlight that would give our position away to just about every Covenant soldier stationed on and around the Truth and Reconciliation. We are meant to be as stealthy as possible here. The UNSC did a poor job of equipping us for this mission. Of course, like many things in this video, it can all be explained as making the game more fun by not handing too many gimmicks to the player to make the game easy. Halo CE was never marketed as a stealth game after all. Finally, for the last thing I want to talk about is actually one of my own contributions. I can't let you guys take all of the credit after all. So my burning question is, why do Forerunner weapons in Halo 4 all reload like contemporary, modern, or even more older weapons? A reminder that the Forerunners were the most technologically advanced beings to ever live. They could harvest the energy of an entire star or draw power from space itself. They created the Halos, the Shield Worlds, and the Ark. They created light bridges, teleporters, and these buttons. But their small arms are reloaded with what look like small batteries or computer chips, not too dissimilar to reloading a conventional magazine-fed firearm. While the weapons opening up to reload and occasionally vaporizing a foe is visually pleasing, the worst offender of the Forerunner arsenal Halo 4 has to be the scatter shot. Why were the Forerunners using break action technology that has been technically obsolete for a long time? Break action shotguns are still widespread today, but usually only for civilians. There might be an example of a break action shotgun being used in Ukraine to shoot down a drone, but using such outdated technology on the battlefield would leave you at a huge disadvantage. So the Forerunners using break action weapons that can only hold 5 USBs is a bit of a stretch when it comes to suspension of disbelief. I do like the scatter shot, I think it looks cool, and I like disintegrating enemies with it, but from the game's perspective, the Forerunners weren't as savvy as designing small arms as humanity or the Covenant were. And that does conclude part 3 of things in Halo that don't make sense. Just to repeat my disclaimer from the start, Halo is a game. Not everything has to have a rational explanation. Games are meant to be fun, first and foremost. What are some of the things I didn't talk about that you think don't make sense in Halo? Leave a comment down below. Like the video if you enjoyed, subscribe for more content, and if enough of you request it, I could be persuaded into making a part 4. You can support me by doing your Amazon shopping through my affiliate links. You do not have to buy the link product, you just have to use the link. Join my Discord so we can get together and play Halo, as well as you can keep updated on my new videos. Get involved. Thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, Spartans, I will see you in the next one.